Hello there, and welcome to the 10th episode of CUZZO-OP, where you got two cousins, one podcast, endless entertainment. I'm your host for this episode, Willie, and as usual, we've got
Isaiah. What's up? We here, number 10. We done this 10 weeks straight.
kind of crazy, right?
Talk to me, bro. We really doing this, bro. We here. And you're here. You've listened 10 weeks straight. We're grateful for you. We on a ride right now. It feels good. I'm excited for what's to come. But I also know Willie's excited about what we talking about today.
Oh, absolutely. So, today, we talking Star Wars. Now, I've said it before, Star Wars is my favorite piece of fiction. Through the good and the bad, it's just always been it. And so to start this whole thing off, similar to our MCU episode from episode 2 of CUZZO-OP, this is really just going to be a breakdown of our thoughts and feelings on the canon material of Star Wars. Canon means it's what fits into the story properly. Non-canon is the crazy things that they make on the side, you know?
So not less The Last Jedi, but also The Last Jedi?
Well, The Last Jedi is canon.
I know.
So, but before we go into any of that deep conversation, for the listeners who may not be into Star Wars, wondering why you should listen to this episode, I just want to quickly go through what Star Wars means to us, because Star Wars means something different to everybody. There's different levels of fans. There's different ways that we watch Star Wars. And so, Isaiah, what is Star Wars for you? What is your experience with Star Wars?
I just feel like when it comes to this conversation, I'm not going to be as of much use as you think I am. And that's where I'm at as a fan, me personally. I just feel like, we're gonna talk, I've seen all 9. I've seen Mando, Clone Wars, pieces of Rebels, enough to call myself a Star Wars fan. And you've definitely, in our talks in these last couple of weeks, 10 weeks, have opened my eyes to I know more about this than I thought I did. And I like this a lot. This world is crazy. So that's where I'm at as a fan right now. What about you though? I know it's your thing, but you're a part of forums and groups where they talk about this. I know this for sure. So talk to me about that.
I mean, number one, to your point about not being much help, I think that's what creates an interesting dynamic. You're viewing Star Wars as one thing. I'm seeing it as something completely different. We're on 2 levels here. And so hearing our perspective about what we watch should be interesting.
I agree.
Yeah, because there's always been people who are like, I'm only going to watch the original trilogy and anything that has to do with that. And then there's people who say that the prequels are what they grew up with. So that's just what they connect with. So what we are about to talk about is it'll be interesting. But for me, I couldn't tell you why necessarily Star Wars has just spoken to me forever. But it just has. Its characters, its world. It's the only word I feel like I can describe it as. And it's kind of corny, but it's magical. You watch it, even in the ones that kind of aren't as high, critically acclaimed, there's still magic there to be found that just makes you feel some type of way. And Star Wars, the originals, inspired a whole generation of filmmakers, editors, animators, and all of that. And so I feel like Star Wars just has that magic to it that's hard to explain. But yeah, I'll be on the forums getting tight because we're a very diverse, toxic fan base also. And some people don't know how to keep themselves at a relaxed level.
Yeah, bro. It reminds me of Marvel fans, gamers. Sometimes when it comes to the way we buy games, it's y'all really need to. You gotta sit back, man. They come on, man.
But overall, I think if you haven't seen Star Wars, give it a shot, because something that's being explored more these last few years is this idea that Star Wars can be multiple things because it is a galaxy far, far away, and it is just stories that we constantly tell in space. We've got westerns, we've got samurai, we've got fantasy. It's a whole bunch of things over here. So I'm sure you'll find something to like, and that's a conversation that we'll get into towards the end of our episode that I want to bring up. But in order to start this, I think we should just do it in order of release. So we're just gonna go right on to Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
So obviously this movie is very special. Duh. But, and that connects to 7 when we talk Force Awakens. Don't let me forget that. My impression of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, in my mind, I always think Lego Star Wars more than I think the actual movies. You see the clips all the time. They're always on the internet, but I think Lego Star Wars, and when I was exposed to the story for the first time, when I got to play through the story for the first time, it was through Lego Star Wars. I don't even think I had seen 4 yet, which I know is crazy. And I just didn't connect with the films as much as I connected with the game. I think it might be because I picked up the game first. I don't know. But all that being said, analyze 4 for us, because I know you're going to school me right now.
I mean, I think you'd be surprised at how many people probably share that same story with you.
Word.
Because back on the PS2, I know those games were like revolutionary.
That one was on the DS.
It was everywhere.
Everywhere.
And so I'm not surprised to hear that people's first Star Wars experiences are through those Lego games, which if you ask me, those original Lego games were actually done pretty well for not having any dialogue.
No dialogue, very fire.
With Episode 4, this movie has just inspired so many other films that we watch even to this day. It's a classic hero's journey with the reluctant hero and the old wise wizard saving the world from the dragon. Like, it's great. If you really think about it, Star Wars, although it is claimed to be science fiction, sci-fi, it started as fantasy, and I think it still in many ways represents fantasy to this day. A New Hope represented fantasy in a different way. It was very unique at the time, and so it's just become incredibly iconic in our culture because of it. Like, even if you're not a fan of Star Wars, I feel like it's important to watch this movie because it hits all the natural story beats that a great story should hit. It's simple, and yet it speaks to people in so many different ways. I've been a fan of these movies for a long time, and yet I feel like I'm still discovering new things about it every time that I watch these movies. One of my issues with A New Hope is actually the fact that you can't really find the original version nowadays to watch unless you like super deep dive. And even then, I don't even know if it's possible because George Lucas made some changes to the film when he was working on his prequel movies. And in my opinion, some of those changes takes away from that specialness of originally what was there. But even with the changes, this movie is still incredibly brilliant. And, it's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's the important one because it's the OG, the one that started it all. And that leads us into what some would say is the most iconic sequel of all time, The Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5, 1980.
Come on, man. Luke, I am your father. It's the one, man. It's the one.
Episode 5 is definitely an iconic movie and has one of the most iconic movie moments of all time. And it's because of this iconic moment that I tell people to watch Star Wars chronologically as long as they have a friend who has seen it all for the first time.
They're going to kill you on the boards.
We all know this iconic moment so well that I feel like if you do the other plot twist in Star Wars history based on the prequels, then that might be more impactful, since you may not recognize it until it's too late. I know I've watched it with people for the first time, and I've done it with them chronologically. You know, I'm sorry if you feel like I've ruined somebody's experience, but it's just watching them knowing that they know the iconic moment, not realize the other Star Wars twist was so good. It was so good. But to what you said, it's funny that you say this iconic moment incorrectly, because everybody does. It's a Mandela effect. The original line in the film is, "No, I am your father," not "Luke, I am your father." So it's incredible that an iconic moment in history is so often misquoted. It's hilarious. But when it comes to what this movie actually represents for the main saga of Star Wars, I understand why people say that it's the best movie. It adds incredible depth to all of the characters, brings out so many different lessons that they need to learn. And like Yoda, bro, characters like Yoda make this movie shine, and it's memorable. Like, it's probably the most iconic sequel of all time. It's not my favorite in the saga or even the trilogy. It might even be my least favorite in the original trilogy.
Wait, what is your favorite?
So my favorite Star Wars movie is Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
I knew you were going to say that.
And we're going to get to reasons why. What's yours?
8.
And we're going to get to that too, because I know that that's a discussion.
I love 8.
Up next, we have Return of the Jedi, Episode 6, 1983. This was Lucas's original ending to the Star Wars story. And the film has many incredible moments. People argue that this film is a little bit too kiddie, too like childlike. And what I have to say to that is, even if the movie is running around with teddy bears and bows and arrows, it's what the teddy bears represent that paints the bigger picture. The movie and the entire original trilogy is about the rebellion of the oppressed rising up against the oppressive governments that hold them under their thumb. And so to see these teddy bears destroying the empire, it was really like, all right, this is dope. Very awesome how you're representing this population who's just kind of like, we might not have the abilities or the weaponry to make a huge impact, but we will put up a fight. And that fight ultimately is one of the most important ones in the history of this galaxy. You know, while watching these movies, Luke is never a really character I felt incredibly strongly about. I grew up with the prequels though, so like Obi-Wan, Anakin, those are like my Star Wars heroes. As much as I know like Luke is a lot of people, he never really got to that level for me. If anything, A New Hope was probably my favorite version of the character, and even then he was a little bit whiny. But in this film, the way they showcase his inner turmoil and make you really wonder whether or not he's going to do the right thing is great, because that's when I was really like, oh, okay, I could feel this guy. It's very well done. And so yeah, his part in this movie was definitely my favorite part.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And I think that as a backdrop for the underlying conflict between Luke and Darth Vader, it's great. You know, there's definitely in the writing, there's a parallelism they're doing there. So yeah, man, I think 6 is great, bro. Also great. In the trilogy, I like 4, but I mean not 4, 5.
But yeah, so overall with this movie, even if you feel like it is a little bit too childish, you can't deny that like it ends everything off so well that yeah, it does make people question whether or not the sequel trilogy should have moved in the direction that it moved in. But I know we'll probably talk about that when we get there. All right, prequel time. And I know you said that you might not be able to give much into this topic, but no, I think you will have perspective because you've seen them. And in our personal conversations, I know you've shared with me things that I'm like, that would be kind of dope to hear you discuss a little bit.
Well, you know, part of what this is for me, right, is like the Clone Wars, going through the show. And I know we're supposed to watch that, or like the last season of that. So I got to catch up and watch like summary video or something to figure out what I'm missing, or maybe watch them. I don't know. It's hard. Anyways, all that being said, I need to be like, when it comes to loving 1, 2, and 3, what I'm watching in Clone Wars and seeing development of Anakin is very important in me having some more respect for 1, 2, and 3. Like, I'll just be absolutely honest with you. Like, I know some people who really just don't care for 1, 2, and 3 at all. Like, they're like, so 4, 5, 6, they're like, nah, forget the Old Testament. Like, it's just New Testament until I die. Like, I'm not on that level. And I'm realizing that there's a lot of great storylines that, again, this is what George Lucas is so good at. He's so good at paralleling themes, and those themes of Anakin, Echo, and Luke, and more. So it's, 1, 2, and 3 is really cool. I'm just not going to be able to give you a lot of help in navigating, what happened in 1, 2, and 3. I'll be absolutely honest.
That's all good.
All I know is Dooku, Grievous, Mandalore.
And that's not even those movies.
See, look at me.
It's funny that you bring up the idea of George Lucas being able to just connect things, because there's a meme that came from, I don't even remember where it came from at this point, because it's memed so often. George Lucas said, it's like poetry, it rhymes. And that's what we just say for like everything. So like for an episode of The Mandalorian where we see a certain character acting a certain way that we saw them in a different movie, it's like, damn, it's like poetry, it rhymes. And that's just what everybody says for that episode.
I love that.
Up next, now that we're moving into the prequels, we have The Phantom Menace from 1999. This was George Lucas saying, I'm going to tell the story of Anakin Skywalker, the guy who will eventually become Darth Vader. In this first movie, I think it gets overly criticized for reasons that I feel like are unfair. Particularly the very intricate political ideas and scenes that are present in the movie. I know that politics aren't everybody's like main cup of tea, but I thought it was pretty interesting that the Empire wasn't just formed through massive military power, but a lot of political maneuvering, which feels incredibly real. Like, based on the real world and the way everything goes, political maneuvering is how things get done. So the way that this movie sets up the downfall of the Republic, the downfall of the Jedi, and the setup of the Clone Wars through political manipulation is fantastic. And then we also got the Duel of the Fates, which I'm not even going to attempt to explain to you the way Dave Filoni does. If you want to go listen to Dave Filoni's explanation of the Duel of Fates, please go do. You can find it on YouTube or somewhere on Disney+. But that's fantastic also. And seeing the Jedi in their prime was great also. There are definitely parts of this movie that I'm not a big fan of, like Jar Jar, right?
Jar Jar Binks.
But he was made to appeal to kids. And it's important to remember that these movies are made for everybody, the wide audience, and children deserve to enjoy it as much as anybody else, especially children. The one thing about this movie and the prequels, also, like, the actors were treated very unfairly. Ahmed Best, Jake Lloyd from this movie, they faced too much toxicity.
That's ridiculous.
And it clearly took a toll on their mental health. Like Ahmed Best was considering suicide, or Jake Lloyd being diagnosed with so many mental issues. We should really just be celebrating the performances that they put into something that they loved instead of just tearing them down. And I feel like a lot of this tearing down just comes from the fact that these movies and this movie was something different than the original trilogy.
I also feel like the first one on the enemy team here that was up to bat was number one. So it's like it received a lot of the hate because it was like, why are y'all putting this out, you know? But as we progress to 2, what year did 2 come out and what year did 6 come out?
So episode 2 came out in 2002, while Return of the Jedi came out in 1983. So that's a 19 to 20 year difference.
Yeah, man, 20 years.
So when looking at episode 2, Attack of the Clones, a fun fact is that the entire film had to be redubbed in post-production because of the noisy equipment that they were using. So whenever you watch that movie, it's all post-production work.
So you telling me they filmed everything and then I had everybody come back to the studio? That's insane.
Besides from that, when I look at this movie, I call it my guilty pleasure Star Wars movie because it's the one that I put on whenever I just need a fun time. Because back in the day, you know, growing up, whenever I would come home from school or daycare or whatever it was at the time, I would just put my VHS in of Attack of the Clones and just watch it daily, every day from start to finish. And sometimes my grandma, who lived with me at the time, would just come through and watch.
So she
also,
watching with
she's
you?
a fan of the original trilogy.
I love that.
So it's definitely not the best movie in the Star Wars franchise, but there's so much to love about it, including its flaws. Like, number one, we got Detective Obi-Wan Kenobi going around trying to solve murders. We got the laughable and cringeworthy dialogue and scenes from Anakin and Padme, but then they also dive deep into like Anakin's dark side.
Yes, sir.
And then, of course, the great spectacle that is the Jedi in the arena on Geonosis. Like, it's historic.
Yeah, that was different too. What's up with that?
So the film brings its energy. It starts at a 10, goes down a little bit to like a 5 during certain sections, and then it goes to an 8, and then it boom back to 10 for the final. And so, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, man. I'm not gonna lie. All that stuff is so important. And again, man, it sucks that it is hard in terms of being a adjustment curve or a learning curve from the first 4, 5, and 6 at the end of the day. But that story is so important, and I love that he was daring enough to share how important it is in this film. Because again, man, I think any prequel, the same way we say a sequel should make the first movie better, is the same way that I think if a prequel should make the story that you love much more meaningful to you. And I think that 1, 2, and 3 do that very well.
I mean, yeah, definitely. And I feel like this leads us into Revenge of the Sith, which is my 10
Your
out of
favorite
10 Star Wars movie that realistically I know isn't a 10 out of 10. There's no such thing as a perfect movie, but I feel that this is the one that hits all the check marks for me. It's the movie that captures what Star Wars means to me. It has the emotional story, lovable characters, epic space battles, lightsaber fights that leave a very lasting impression, and they're emotional lightsaber fights, not just flash. There's meaning behind them. Like, I know for some people, the deeper and slower paced films like Empire are going to resonate more. But for me, this is the perfect balance of fast pace, yet emotionally impactful. The exploration of Darth Vader's origins to the end of the Clone War and how it leads to the fall of the Republic. You know, when you think about the scope and the scale of what this movie is and how it all ties together perfectly is great. Like, people doubted whether or not George Lucas could pull it off, but he did, in my opinion. And what I love about Star Wars is that we all have a different spark inside of us.
Spark. Talk about the spark.
That makes this universe so meaningful and incredible. And later on, when I quickly touch on the 3 aspects of Star Wars that I think this universe works best in, Revenge of the Sith, I think hits all of them. But I want to hear your thoughts on Revenge of the Sith, or at least your Anakin thoughts, since I know you have some of those.
I just think, yeah, man, it's Anakin, bro. Anakin, man. It's Anakin, bro. There's nothing else to say. And we're going to talk more about this. You already know I'm in this place, so I'm assuming that Clone Wars episode you want to do is really going to dive into the Anakin waters. I know that.
So now we're going to move into Star Wars: The Clone Wars. In 2002, there was a Samurai Jack style Star Wars show called Clone Wars. But then it was made non-canon, and we got the 2008 film and show.
But at that time, you heard one story, and then they retconned it. That's crazy.
Someone at Lucasfilm brought Dave Filoni over from Avatar. George Lucas was like, yeah, you're going to be my apprentice. And the rest is history, you know? We love Dave Filoni here, but we also be wanting to send him therapy bills for all of his stuff, because he be trying to hurt us. He be making us laugh, cry, and everything in between.
That boy Filoni, we owe Filoni so many things. And if you don't know who Filoni is, you're baloney, man. Come on, man.
For Clone Wars, I want to save some of my thoughts for our 13th episode of CUZZO-OP, which will be the Siege of Mandalore. But overall, I just feel like the show was very well done. It got some of Star Wars' best. I remember watching the original movie with you in 2008, and then in the years after, sneaking away from family events being held down the block so that we could watch new episodes airing live.
Yo, bro, it's because of Filoni. We did the same thing with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I remember the season finale of season 1, the Cad Bane trailer we were hyped about.
Son, Cad Bane was so cool, and they made him cooler when it went live action, bro.
So yeah, I understand the show and its hype, and I don't think it should be an S tier show, because there are episodes that are like, all right, fine, we gotta speak to all of our audience, but it's an A. It's an A with S tier arcs. And Ahsoka, forget about it. She's great.
Clone Wars, I love. I just enjoy Ahsoka also as a character. She's great. She's great, man. So I remember right from...
It's crazy to think about how many people found her incredibly annoying when she first arrived, as if that wasn't part of character development that was planned.
I think that's so stupid. And she's annoying. I'm not saying she's not, but she has to be bold and stubborn and annoying in order for her to become what she is now. And I just can't wait to see what they do with her show. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Perfect segue into our next point of topic, Star Wars Rebels. Yo, watch Rebels.
I know. I'm gonna
because
start.
Ahsoka is essentially going to be not a season 5, but a season 5 of Star Wars Rebels. And we've already seen 2 of the characters from this show in live action.
I bet.
And I don't even know if you would know either of them if you saw them.
Really? Damn, that must be cool for you. I got to watch that then.
Yes, because one of them, it's very short. I'm not saying that they made it a very big thing, but
the
one of
fact
them
that you
is
see
in
him as a
Rogue One.
cameo. Oh, yeah. I need to watch that, bro.
And then the other one is another thing that might be currently airing right now. But
I heard Mandalorian is doing that, yeah.
But Star Wars Rebels is fantastic. I think depending on the day, I would say I prefer it to Clone Wars, because where Clone Wars is an anthology show of different arcs, this is a focused narrative on a group, a team that becomes a family, and the things that they do while honoring itself. It was also the first thing that Disney produced when they had purchased Lucasfilm, with Dave Filoni in charge of it.
Right.
They honor what they want to be while also honoring everything else around them. And they used Rebels, due to the Clone Wars cancellation, to give fans answers about the Clone Wars, which created this interesting dynamic of when Clone Wars gets brought back, now because of things you mentioned on Rebels, now you have to honor Rebels on Clone Wars, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Rebels handles things like the fallout of the Siege of Mandalore, and they handled that before the Siege of Mandalore ever made it to screen.
It rhymes.
They handle Mandalorian stuff. A lot of characters
it's definitely
from Mandalorian.
rhyming. It's definitely rhyming.
And so some of my favorite Star Wars moment of all time comes from Star Wars Rebels.
Okay. That's that Darth Maul.
You should know about that. Stop it.
You already spoiled it. You were like, you're never going to watch this, so watch this
Bro,
clip.
yeah, that was years ago. Trust, because I'm ready to get the tattoo from that moment on me somewhere.
That's going to be hard. That's going to be hard. But yeah, bro. 100%.
Here we go. You said don't let you forget about this point. The Force Awakens, 2015, the first Star Wars movie in 10 years, the first Disney-produced Star Wars movie, and the first movie to be continuing the storyline that ended in 1983.
AKA, they want to make more money. So,
I mean, they purchased Star Wars for
a reason. They invested. So, I think like the big thing for me was right when this movie began, I think I had just played Lego Star Wars again. And I realized the pattern of the story while I was live watching it. And I'm talking like in the first 25 minutes, I was like, oh, shoot, this is just going to be like one massive homage to A New Hope. And I found it to be beautiful because it didn't feel like an adaptation, but it also did.
Yeah.
Like it's not, because it's continuing the story and yet it's using the same magic, knowing it's safe. You know, if it ain't broke, don't break it type of approach, but stylized in a way that's modern and that continues the story. I thought it was great and I enjoyed it. I watched it. I was working at the AMC theaters at the mall at that time, so I saw it a lot. I'm cleaning up popcorn, getting ready to clean the theater toward the back end of the movie. I saw it at least 100 times, and I think it stuck with me. And I said, I think this was a really great decision. It was a safe decision. But I think the safety that was exercised with this decision by Abrams, it created the unsafe approach of my favorite Star Wars movie. But I won't go too fast though. I'll let you get your point off.
I knew you were gonna get into that. The Force Awakens is my favorite movie from the sequel trilogy. I love the way that it honors A New Hope while also doing its own thing in some aspects. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Han Solo. This movie was the first time I was like, I like this dude.
Do you feel like watching him and liking him more during 7 made you have more appreciation for him when you go back into 4 and 5?
I guess. Because it's very interesting, because as we're going to find out later, I also appreciate him in something else. But The Force Awakens was that magic once more. I remember going to the theater with my boy Q and just watching it there, and it was like, wow, this is Star Wars. This is my first memorable Star Wars experience, like big
yeah, you got to have your version of what they got to have back then.
And so just that movie was fantastic to me.
I love that.
Safety and all.
Nah, for sure. It was definitely safe, but they made it magical, man. I mean.
Yeah. And they started opening as we were preparing for our next, not our next, because we have one movie in between, but for episode 8, this opened doors that we will then discuss.
When he shot my mans, bro, I was like, they are killing this. Because the way that it connects back to 4 with the Obi-Wan moment with Darth Vader, That moment was fire because then you still get to see Han Solo again as we keep progressing in these stories. It's not, you know what I mean? Like there's just this cool thing that he did. They're great at it, man. You know, listen, these days what makes a movie wonderful is not just the performance of the story or the pace of development. Development always feels more meaningful when you're watching a show or a movie or playing a game when it all connects back to another point. And I just think this movie did that in a very much modern language, fancy ways. It was a spectacle for sure. And it only goes up from here, in my opinion.
We gonna talk. But in between episodes 7 and 8, we got the release of Star Wars Rogue One.
I forgot that happened in between them. Yeah, bro, I love Rogue One too. I love that one too.
So when it comes to Rogue One, it's interesting because if I'm not mistaken, my friend Quinn might remember, I think I saw this movie either a little bit before or the day that Carrie Fisher passed away.
Wow.
And so it was very big for the end of the movie where they have
the CGI.
Even if it is just the CGI, it's still just like, wow.
I would argue they have the best CGI that they've used, in my opinion. I don't know another.
What Rogue One or Lucasfilm?
I'm saying Lucasfilm. When I think about other characters that have had to be CGI'd because the actor has passed away, no one does it like they've done it in Star Wars, even in the TV shows. But anyways, go.
The TV shows, I think,
which is saying something. You know, even that is connected because we hate how bad the CGI is in 1, 2, 3, and now it's like the CGI is amazing.
CGI is perfectly fine in 1, 2, 3. Calm yourself.
4.
It's when it's put into 4, when 2000 technology is put into a 1970 movie. That's a problem.
All right, my bad.
Rogue One is fantastic. It gave us something different for the Star Wars world. It's a war movie. It's a very serious movie. And it was fantastic. And the ending is one of the most memorable things in Star Wars history also. And it perfectly goes into episode 4, which is fantastic. So Rogue One is loved. I love Rogue One.
Yeah, man. I one big fan of Ip-Man. So seeing Donnie in there was dope. Come on, son. And then the story was great. Mendelsohn is excellent as an antagonist always. He does do it the same way on anything, but I loved the rendition of villain that he was in this movie. Yeah. Great. He was great.
Yep. And it was Disney also giving us Vader live for the first time.
That was brutal, bro.
Yeah, fantastic. Rogue One is loved. Episode 8, The Last Jedi. As the host of this episode, I'm going to pass the torch to you to talk about it for a little bit because I know this is your soapbox.
All I'm going to say is this, man. Rian Johnson is a beautiful human being in the way he makes movies. And if you haven't watched Knives Out or Glass Onion, you're an idiot. I'll be honest. It's love, but you're bugging. There's no reason not to watch those. You will understand why I love Last Jedi if you understand why those two movies are great. I think that when it comes to connecting pieces, Rian Johnson is very good at what he does in the area of parallelism, like we're talking about in this episode. So it made sense for him to be selected to direct this movie. One, they knew that he was going to do this. I need to say this as a backdrop, okay? Then he goes about doing it, and he decides to pick apart the safety of Abrams' approach on 7, which is basically the exact same pattern, again, like we said, from A New Hope with the way he homaged it. It is a refreshing take that I didn't want a replication of every single movie. I didn't want 4 to be like 7 and 5 to be like 8 and 6 to be like 9. That would be boring. I just feel like I wanted something new, and Rian Johnson delivered something brand new. And I understand he stepped on toes, and I understand he said some wild things, but the connections were there. I don't want to hear no one talking about the connections not being there because this man literally directs to make connections for a living. I'm not hearing y'all. That's just my opinion. Therefore, we could jump into the details together, but that's why I see this the way I see it. I think that Ryan did his thing in this movie. It is the most memorable Star Wars movie to me. I love what he chose to do with Rey. I love what he chose to do with Kylo. I think their conflict and their relationship with one another and what he created there is very unique, and it has never existed in Star Wars before. Tell me it's existed in Star Wars before.
What, their conflict with one another?
No, not the conflict with one another. The relationship that they have to one another within their conflict.
They're both lost people.
When do you see lost people ever exist in this Star Wars political story? You don't. It's a refreshing take. It's something different. And I just feel like people didn't want to hear that. That's my soapbox thing. I thought it was great. That was at the core. And then they just fudged it up, bro. Cause 9 just makes it safe again. And it's just I hate them for that.
Here's how I feel about The Last Jedi, right? I think Rian Johnson is a brilliant filmmaker. I don't think he was the right person to do the middle of the story. And if he was, then he should have been the person to do the 9th one also. But because of the backlash he got from this film, they replaced him.
But that just proves it was a money game, and I understand that. But I just feel like if they had given him the room to quote unquote explain himself, I think he would have created something really dope. But
absolutely, it's just one of the big things is Abrams, like I said earlier, opened doors. And what Rian Johnson did was he decided to come in the middle movie and close every single door.
Yes, he just destroyed the building, bro. It wasn't even
he didn't leave any doors to be explored for that 9th movie. He said, I'm going to answer every question you had about 7. Fuck the next movie. I'm doing it all here.
Yeah, you're right.
And so that's where I'm like,
but what's the political reasoning behind that? Does anybody know?
I haven't looked into it because you go on the internet, you look up Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, it gets ugly very fast. But for me, yes, what he did with Rey was fantastic.
Oh,
it was
so
brilliant.
beautiful.
It was a subversion of expectations that worked, and it, in my opinion, amplified the Star Wars universe because it's like
Star Rebels.
The Force isn't tied down to any one person. Anyone can be the Force. Anyone can use the Force. And that was brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant story. Kylo Ren, my favorite part of the sequels. Top 10 Star Wars characters for me. Top 5. Top 3.
He's crazy. He's crazy. And Adam Driver was at his best as an actor to me in that role.
In The Last Jedi. I think in The Last Jedi is when he's
I think he had fun. I think he would, whoa, this isn't safe. I can have fun with this one.
Yes. And then like even Luke Skywalker, I know people have a lot of feelings on how they handle Luke. Like I said, Luke wasn't anybody special to me based off of the original trilogy. And so when he was doing things here, I felt like I understood it. Like he's scared. And, you know, it's different, in my opinion, to look at your father who failed in his face and tell him he failed is different than facing your own failure.
Yeah. There's a depth to that development that I think Rian Johnson is the appropriate individual to take us on that level of development. I think he does a good job at that, but because it's not about what's said, it's about what's not said. He's very good at that, you know, and I think I love that from Luke, because there's some stuff where it's like if you say too much, you're kind of tarnishing the legacy of this character. But he leaves a lot for the viewer if you're willing to take a perspective and really read into these moments for what it means to Luke. You can find something really meaningful, which is why I thought his moments in this movie were very meaningful. You know, his impact on Rey, very fire. I thought that was crazy. And what it does for him and how it triggers him as a mentor, like, come on, it was so good. It was just, ugh.
Overall, I think I would love to see more Rian Johnson in Star Wars. But I think as a middle movie, he made decisions that did not help the...
Yeah, I want to know more about that. That's we're going to look into that.
Yeah. Star Wars Resistance, I ain't watch Resistance, and I know you didn't watch Resistance, so we're skipping Resistance.
Okay.
Solo, A Star Wars Story.
Woof, that boy Childish Gambino, man.
I loved this movie more than a lot of people. It's the second time I've cared about Han Solo ever. And I wish we got more. I'm a part of the where's Solo 2 at? We need that.
I don't know why that's not out yet, and I understand.
I mean,
There's a lot of high end actors now, and that from that piece, including Gambino.
yeah.
Donald Glover, he's doing a lot of things right now, but they got to get that together because Solo was great, man.
I mean,
great energy, interesting story, kept my attention the entire time, high stakes the entire movie. It was great.
They just released it at a bad time. Number one, it came after Last Jedi. There was a lot of terrible things going on, and then it released in between Infinity War and Deadpool 2.
Never. It wasn't gonna
and
do
like
it.
all these Star Wars movies that Disney were releasing were December, and then they were like, let's release Solo in May.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that.
Solo, fun time. I want to make Solo 2 happen somehow.
All in time, my bro.
And then the last main saga film, The Rise of Skywalker. My least favorite Star Wars movie.
Booty cheeks, do. And I understand why it is. I hear the perspective you shared earlier with 8. But still, bro, this movie's garbage.
I think they should have rolled with the punches that Rian Johnson had left and crafted something that just said, we're not going to take these steps to go backwards to rewrite what he did, which there's actually initial like draftings of a script that the movie was originally called The Duel of Fates. That movie sounds like it would have been fire. If you've never looked into it, Isaiah, I suggest you look into it.
I will look into it right after this conversation.
Because it essentially just made like Kylo, bad guy. And the final battle is on Coruscant. And Rey is running around with a double-bladed blue saber. And like there's just so much going on in that original idea.
They're stupid for not running that.
To step back on the work that Rian Johnson did, even with all the backlash, you guys set yourself up for even bigger just failures. Because that movie is just like, and I love it. I think every Star Wars movie has something about it that can be enjoyed, including this one, even though it is my least favorite one. But it's just, it rubs me the wrong way when you go backwards to say like Rey's a nobody. All right, that's great. Nah, she's a Palpatine. And the dialogue in that movie to address some of these things was just so stupid. Because you could tell that it was just internet talking. Like the internet uses the phrases, nah, she's a Kenobi, she's a Palpatine, she's a Skywalker. And in the movie, Kylo Ren is say, you're his granddaughter. You are a Palpatine. Like that's ugly.
I can't imagine how tough that is for the actors and the actresses.
Finn is the biggest disappointment of those movies. They should have probably just killed him in The Last Jedi, because at least that would have tied his story up nicely. Because what they did in this movie was terrible.
They could have given him an opportunity to be a Jedi in the 9th one.
Absolutely. A stormtrooper
after what Rian Johnson
Jedi?
did. That would have been crazy. It never existed. Stupid, bro. But yeah, bro, I just think when it comes to Finn, it's like, he's black too. So y'all really fumbling the bag. Big time. Big time. Big time, in my opinion. And it's not just about, the black guy always catching the short end of the stick. It's also about like how dope of a character he could be and would be. You know what I mean? Like, why would you just fumble the bag like that? Yeah. I don't understand. There was a lot of fumbling in the bag, though. He wasn't the only guy.
That's true. Even with, like, Kylo Ren and Rey. Kylo Ren, his story is just that of Vader's at this point, and they could have done something completely different in either way. You make him the full villain. You full send that idea. Or you redeem him as he does in this movie, but then you let him live to feel the redemption a little bit. People don't know how to handle people that are redeemed. It feels like they just got to kill
Thanos
him.
at the farm. They can't have the Thanos at the farm moment.
Terrible. I think Rey should have probably died and have Ben be that redeemer. But then on the other side, I'm like, damn, Ben Solo was able to do what Anakin Skywalker couldn't. He was able to save the one that he cared about from dying. And that's lit. To me, that's fire. What's not fire is that when Kylo Ren has his redemption, he doesn't say another word for the movie. When he gets stabbed with the lightsaber in The Rise of Skywalker, Adam Driver says nothing else for the rest of the film except ow. When he makes this big jump and lands funny, he goes, ow. And that's it. What is that shit?
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like they didn't know what to do after they did that.
And then the biggest controversy of the movie, which I don't even understand why it's the biggest controversy of the movie. And I know that there are some people that are listening that are going to be like, ew, that's how you feel. But like Rey Skywalker, they fucked up so many times that at the end of the movie, it's like you have three options. You say, all right, Rey is going to embrace her Palpatine lineage and make it something better. That concept on paper is great, but Palpatine, the world's biggest piece of shit, and so that wouldn't have slid.
Right.
Which we didn't even talk about how
He's been
dumb
been
Palpatine
behind so
coming
much.
back was because they
Bro,
didn't
I
set
hate
it up
that
properly. But
because the ominous concept of Palpatine up until this point, with all the pieces of content we've talked about where he's popped out, his name has been involved. It's a narrative presence badass, bro. And then to see him in this film, bro, I was just like, why are you doing my man's?
Yeah.
He's this menace over the entire. He just. What's the word?
A Phantom Menace. That's why that movie is titled that movie, because it is about Darth Maul, but it is very much about Palpatine.
Exactly. So all that being said, they folded on that, and I just feel like there's a lot of moments where it's not like they just fold a little; they fold a lot, really, really bad, all throughout that movie.
But yeah, for Rey Skywalker, it doesn't bother me. She chose the family that she felt like was right for her. I understand why people are like, damn, but she's not good enough. And it's like, I get why you're saying that, but like at the same time, she had her battles. Roll with the punches, guys. We just gotta roll with the punches. I'm ready to write. I'm ready to write my Rey story whenever Lucasfilm calls me. I got a great story for Rey in mind. Just because I just quickly want to go through this, I don't really have much to say about Bad Batch.
Yeah, I think Bad Batch is great. I like what they're doing. I like the characters. I like the art style. Obviously, you know that. I haven't seen season 2 yet, though.
Yeah, Bad Batch was fun. The callbacks and everything that they do on Bad Batch. You telling me, wait, you've seen season 1 of Bad Batch, but you haven't seen the Siege of Mandalore?
I know it's bad, bro.
Yeah, so Bad Batch calls the Rebels. It calls the Clone Wars. It's great. It's fun. I have nothing to really say about Bad Batch. Bad Batch has its episodes where I'm like, yo, that joint was great.
This is going. And then there's somewhere I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah. But just to end off on the Rise of Skywalker, since we ain't tied it up, my least favorite Star Wars movie. Hope they managed to expand the sequels in a meaningful way that even if the movie isn't great, people can appreciate.
I never met a person in real life that thought that movie was good.
The Mandalorian. This is what some people would argue it was Disney's hit. People would argue that this is Disney's
You mean the
hit.
Western Mandalorian?
The first 2 seasons that were the Western, yes.
Yeah, man, I love that they brought this because you talked earlier about the fact that Star Wars isn't sci-fi, it's fantasy. And I think the way that they're able to take the core of story and bend it in a way that makes Western is dope. And I loved how they did everything from the title of the this, the that, the apostate is one of the episodes from season 3. Like I love the ominous nature of the titles. And then you go into the show and you hold that as a thing in the back of your mind. Like, how am I going to find that in the show? And that's a Western dynamic. Because again, it's narrative presence being used. You know, the ominous guy walks into the saloon with the dark story, and no one knows who. It's so good, bro. They're killing that.
Ludwig on the track is great. Which, to just quickly, John Williams on all the films. You don't beat John Williams, but Ludwig for the story they were telling was great. Star Wars is always great with the way
Isn't it Ludwig? Ludwig.
I've always heard Ludwig.
Oh, I bet.
We gonna figure that out. The titling in Star Wars is always great because of its meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And I remember, like you said, episode 6 of season 2, the tragedy, and you're like, bro, the first 5 minutes of the episode were mad lighthearted. Why are we calling this joint the tragedy? The Mandalorian gave me the most magical moment in Star Wars history for me, with its finale of season 2. At 3 a.m. on a cold December night. That moment. Forget
That was
about
a
it.
sick moment. And again, man, CGI going crazy, bro.
Yeah. And the CGI only got better on the Book of Boba Fett for that character.
I agree.
The Book of Boba Fett for me is like a C- show with A+ episodes.
Yeah, man, that's episode 4 and 5, right?
5 and 6.
5. I always say it's 4 and 5.
Episode 5 is one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars that I've ever seen.
And honestly, still felt westerny, in my opinion.
Because it was an episode of The Mandalorian.
Right, it was. I'm just saying, like, this season 3 of Mandalorian is where we've taken a turn to not feeling Western anymore.
Yes. Now I feel like it's a night story.
And that's why people are upset, I think, because it's also very hard when you pivot the manner in which you tell a story. It's not just what's going on and if it's active. These aren't isolated stories. The stories build up on each other differently.
Yeah, I'm excited to eventually talk that Mando season 3 with you, especially since we'll have a little bit more knowledge of Mandalore as a whole.
Oh yeah.
But
it's gonna make it better.
The Book of Boba Fett to me was just like they fumbled in so many ways.
Like Mandalore involves Bo-Katan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's over.
And the Book of Boba Fett, I'm just like, man, why did we do this with this show when it could have been so much more than what it was? Why did we treat this as a Mandalorian 2.5, which I'm fine if the Mandalorian gets his time to shine, but episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett feels like what they probably originally wanted the premiere of season 3 of the Mandalorian to be. And there are decisions that are made on the Book of Boba Fett that I feel like even now, deep into Mando season 3, that I still don't understand why they decided to make these decisions on that show.
Like what?
Reuniting Din and Grogu. From the amazing moment of the Mandalorian that the whole show was about up until that point, just to say, yeah, we're not going to let you even feel that time away from each other.
Yeah.
Because it's about show, not tell. And like even Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni can't agree on how long Grogu was with Luke.
How much are each of them saying?
Jon Favreau said he was with Luke for a year or two. Meaning that in between season 2 and 3 or a year or two. Dave Filoni is like, we're still not even past 10 ABY. Which means the show would only be within a year. All of it. So you got Jon Favreau saying the Mandalorian has already taken place. Every season is a year, then a 1 to 2 year difference, and then Dave Filoni like it's not even been a year. Y'all can't even agree.
Yeah, that's different. No matter what, whether it's that or that, and both of them are too short, and I agree with you. I think that was weird. But at the same time, I also think about Disney, and I think about money, and I think about what they did with episode 9, and I think like Grogu's big, man. He's a big character. He's a certain demographic that will watch.
Yeah.
So,
but
Jar Jar Binks.
To move away from that, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Talk on it.
Man, I loved Kenobi, man. I thought that the supporting characters made the show. And I'm not saying that Obi's story in the front and center and his shame and the way they put that on screen front and center isn't the main line, but it's better because the supporting characters are strong. I liked the Inquisitor. I can't remember her name right now. And then of course you've got this now seemingly ominous, kind of like the Phantom Menace himself, presence, but in a very personal way, because it's like this was his brother, this was his man's. The way that they put that on screen, they did it slow. Sometimes there were episodes where it felt like it was dragging, but when I look back now, I'm like, I'm glad it did. I got a lot of time to be able to just watch him do, be stupid mentally and make dumb decisions, all because he's prideful and he's ashamed of himself. Like, it's just raw. I love Obi, bro. Great character.
For me, Obi-Wan is my favorite character of all time. He's number 1. This show was special to me, even with its problems. especially when episode 5 hit and the flashback with Hayden Christensen, who was, we're lucky enough to have him returning to Star Wars after the way he was treated.
I know.
The flashback was a love letter to me as an Attack of the Clones fan.
Yeah.
Because it's them from that time period, and it's just like, okay, they're loving me right now. They're recognizing me.
Yeah, even in those interviews that they did for that, them saying that that's who it was. They were like, "This is for Willies." Like, there's people out there that need this.
I remember when you texted me, he was like, "Yo, Ewan McGregor out here styling himself, man."
Yo, bro, his fits was going.
But Obi-Wan, even with its problems, because it's not the best show in the world, and it's incredible how just weird the behind the scenes of it all was, it's still special to me. I recognize it's not an A+ show. It might not even be a B+ show.
It was special in a lot of ways,
which is what tingles my Star Wars inside. You know.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. That's a good way to put it.
Now, did you watch Andor?
I haven't, bro. I heard that it's a spy show, and I need to get into it.
So here's what I'll tell you about Andor. I binged the entire show, and when I say I binged it just to watch, just to talk about it today.
Wow. Why didn't you say anything?
I had not seen it before today.
Wow. Okay, so even you hadn't seen it.
Binged it all. What?
Damn.
This show was fantastic.
Okay, bet I'm gonna watch it, bro. It's a spy show, right?
It's essentially like a spy espionage show about the character from Rogue One.
What kind of person would like it?
I feel like if there's any show to show someone who's not a Star Wars fan and say, like, here's what Star Wars could be, it's this. Similar to how Rogue One was a war movie, this movie is very, like, realistic. And it's very grounded in, like, a reality that almost feels weird for Star Wars. The first few episodes for me weren't hitting that Star Wars feeling inside of me. It was hitting, this is great television, but is it great, like, for me and what I see as Star Wars? But just to give you, like, an idea, the episodes are like Clone Wars, where they're like arcs. Every episode is like an arc. So, like, episodes 8 through 10. 8 through 10 had me goosebumping on the, like, had goosebumps.
I like that. How many episodes
Andor
are there?
was fantastic. There's 12 in the first season, because it's getting a season 2. This show was fantastic. And then when you look at Andor, it's really a shame when you look back at, like, Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, because it's like these are all coming from the same places. Yeah, but the same company.
What's the difference between that and this? One is completely a brand new, essentially a brand new IP.
I more so means like the production, where like Obi-Wan sometimes looked very cheaply made. I haven't felt like that about Andor at all. And the difference is the production of Andor refused to use the volume. They were on site. They were on location. They built sets. They built towns. They did that. And so it does have that feeling of realism that even though Star Wars deserves to not always feel realistic, it's like Andor, it's like, damn. Which makes me wonder if the pandemic had a lot to do with Obi-Wan, especially.
It probably did. On top of that, I think that's going to become another piece of the future of cinema. That's going to start to feel vintage, which you just explained.
Yeah.
So,
but, you know, Andor is fantastic. I'm glad I finally caught up. I'm glad that I was able to binge it. Couldn't imagine watching it week to week because I would be stressed, like wondering what happens next.
Big time stress.
I don't think there's anything else in terms of things that have been released. I mean, the only other canon material that I would like to just quickly touch on is Fallen Order, with Survivor coming out soon. Fallen Order was great.
I'm so gassed for this game, bro. Yeah, so pumped.
Me too. So Fallen Order was fantastic. Besides that,
and I love that they're entering into the what's it called? The High Republic, bro.
Yes.
Them navigating into High Republic with this next game. I mean, they already were teetering, but the way they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's different, you know. There's a lot of content in the Clone Wars. There's a lot of content in After Order 66. There's a decent amount. To see them do this years later, I'm like, yes, sir.
So overall, I mean, Star Wars, just there's books out there. they're great. I've read a few. There's comic books out there that are great. Star Wars, there's something different for everybody when it comes to Star Wars. And I think people need to understand that not all of Star Wars is going to be for you. And just because it's not for you doesn't mean that it's trash.
And if you have the patience and you take the time to go watch what might not be for you, it will make what is for you better because it all rhymes.
So go watch Rebels, Isaiah.
I will. I'm telling you, it's a matter of time. I need to just make time to watch it.
Before we wrap up this episode, I just want to ask, since this weekend was Star Wars Celebration, we had a lot of news. What was your favorite piece of information or news that we got from the weekend? I'll share mine first. I think the Rey movie might be my new favorite project that was announced. You know, because like the Ahsoka trailer came out and I loved it, but I'm excited that Daisy Ridley is taking the chance to come back, even with everything that she went through. And so I'm excited to see what they do, to see if they expand on that, which I find it crazy that I'm picking that as my favorite piece of information, especially with like Dave Filoni's movie or like the Acolyte news that we got. I think it's just Rey. I'm hyped for her to come back and see if they can expand or if they're just going to fold once more. But what do you think was your favorite piece of information to come out?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same place as you, man. I'm excited to see Rey return and do something, build something new. I'm excited to see what they build. I'm also excited for Acolyte, man. Honestly, man, just Jedi. More Jedi. I want to see more Jedi. Anyways, man, Star Wars is massive and it's magical and it's amazing. Yep. And like you said, there's something for anyone and everyone. So hopefully as the listener, you've heard something that kind of interests you, whether you're looking for something super fantasy, maybe you like Westerns, maybe you like really well-made films. There's everything for anyone. Yeah. If you're a cinephile, there's stuff to find. If you like spy shows, there's stuff to find. You like great animation, there's stuff to find. If you want to just laugh, there's some stuff to find.
Yeah. So overall, like I said, this episode was to give people an idea of where we're both at in the Star Wars community, because we will be having talks. Siege of Mandalore, that'll be out soon. Mando season 3, I know you have thoughts.
And then Jedi Survivor coming out in 2 weeks.
And then, you know, looking way forward in the future, Ahsoka, something we're gonna have to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
And if you get to watch Rebels before that, that'd be a very awesome experience also. So
I have to do it. I'm going to watch it before, for sure.
Every generation of Star Wars is different. They're crafted differently, you know. Eventually, I'll get into conversations about, like, lightsaber combat. And I think that'll be an interesting conversation to just have like on one of these episodes.
Her style and the Japanese adaptation type of looking episode where she pops in on Mando season 2.
Yes.
Crazy.
All of it. It's all done very well and honors what it inspired it. But there's our Star Wars episode. It's out. There you go.
It's in the universe.
Hope you understand us, where we're coming from. We different with our opinions, and we are able to sit and discuss it, which is what some Star Wars fans might need a little bit more of. You know, as this episode is coming to a close, I just want to hit those last 3 points. These are fast. The 3 points of what I think Star Wars at its best is. We got number 1, when it's like, we're going to be bittersweet. We're going to hit you with the emotions like Revenge of the Sith, like I was talking about. It's great. It's bittersweet because it's like, yeah, everything is going to crap. But here's our new hope also. And we're crying and laughing because it's all so good. It's so good. Even seeing Anakin go to the dark side, you're like, damn, but they're telling it so well. Number 2, when they just embrace the craziness. When Star Wars is like, yo, we're going to be all out wacky. We're going to give you a 4-episode arc about droids. We're going to give you the most bizarre looking creatures and planets that's always fun because it does bring you to that galaxy far, far away. And then number 3 is just that poetry. Those moments where they're showing things like the indomitable. Those moments where they're just showing you things like the human spirit that is unbreakable. Things like Obi-Wan Kenobi, or how easy it is for things to be broken, how people can be broken, like Maul, like Vader. So those moments of just like poetry and heartache, it's all great. It all mixes together. Those 3 points could all be one. And, Revenge of the Sith hits it all. So, yeah. Now, we didn't talk about Tales of the Jedi purposely. I didn't bring it up because of Clone Wars and our Siege of Mandalore episode. I just think it would be better suited for that episode. But I loved it. That's all I'm going to say. The end. Take it away, Isaiah, and end it all off.
We're thankful for you listening. As always, this has been episode 10. And even if you live in a galaxy far, far away, when you jump in CUZZO-OP, you'll always find 2 cousins, 1 podcast, endless entertainment.